Hello, how's everybody doing on this beautiful Wednesday? So I wanted to talk about jazz guitar. What else? And then, fact is that music in general, and specifically jazz, is a language. And you want to get the fluency in such a way that you don't think about playing. You just play. By that I mean, as I'm talking to you, I'm not thinking of every word. I don't have anything written or anything like that. I just want to talk about the language of jazz or the language of guitar playing, which is very, very similar to the way we communicate. So that's first and foremost what it is. It's a communication tool. So basically, when I'm thinking about a solo or I'm playing a piece, what I'm thinking about is what is the mood that I want to convey in that. Is it a happy mood? Is it a sad mood? Is it kind of go up and down, something somewhere in between? So that's very much in the way I think about constructing a solo. Ironically enough, I don't think a lot about music. I think music is one of those things that, especially as jazz musicians or people who love jazz, we do so much theoretical studies that sometimes that can actually constrain us and restrains us from our creativity. I think that if you are a writer per se and you learn all of the elements of style and all the great grammar and stuff like that, if you start thinking about it as you're writing a piece, it just becomes something very technical and it doesn't flow. So that Scott Fitzgerald and all the great writers, they never thought about writing in that fashion, and people like Charles Bukowski and things of that nature. So that's the same way that you want to approach music. Don't think about it in a technical term, but at the same time, do the technical requirements as a prerequisite. Okay, that's your foundation. So scales, chords, learning solos, those are all of the theoretical foundation. It's the same way that when we learn to write, when we learn to speak, we learn, subject, noun, adjective, adverb, past participle, things of that nature. When we learn to speak, we learn to speak in such a way that we can convey our thoughts, people can understand us. And that's basically the language of jazz. And one of the things that I think is very lyrical about guitar is that for me, when I do a solo, it's the art of repetition. By that, I mean, I want to get a motif in somebody's head that it keeps coming back to that. Usually that's called a melody. So if you're lost about what I'm talking about, it could be like you're soloing and then you have a melody. You just keep going back to a little bit lines of the melody. And even if you lose your place in the chord progression, things of that nature. By repetition, I'm also referring to lines that the listener can kind of hear and kind of gravitate to. So for example, so say I've got this, which is two chords, minor sevenths. So in this case, I've got E minor 7 to a D minor 7. So I might play something like this. So at the beginning of that, I've got these two chords that are vamping, E minor 7 to D minor 7. And then what all I'm doing is like, so the listener can kind of hear some type of development of a solo lines. I've got these repetitive lines, which is just a slide, almost like that blues call and answer response. And that's one of the things you kind of notice about really good solos. They're not all over the place. There's kind of a linear sort of progression where there's repetitive motifs and lines going on. So, for example, again, more of this might go like this. Second time around, I might do some level of variations. And you're not thinking about it, you're kind of hearing the progression in the background. That might be my main line. And off of that, I do variations. Bach actually, I think, was one of the best improvisers. So if you listen to a lot of the Bach partitas and all this other stuff that he wrote, it's basically the same lines going over, and each time you're playing it, there's like a slight variation on the theme. And to me, that's kind of like the art of a really good solo. So good solos to me are a combination of single lines, maybe octaves, maybe chords, keeping the variety, but coming back to some kind of a theme. So that theme again might be. So to me, it's like two people having a conversation, two line. It's the D minor 7 and the E minor 7 having it. And so they're having a dialogue, and this person might say, and then this person might say, okay? And then the second time around, he might say, and then the answer might be, then you go back, no, this is what I was talking about. That's the art of a solo. And I don't think about it like that, but organically, that's the way it flows. I'm thinking about a conversation between a series of chords, and it's almost like this call and response. So, again, this is not to say that don't go and study the theory and say, okay, what are the lines that I play over a D minor 7 and E minor 7? I think far too often that's how we study solos, and that's how that stuff is thought. But think about it as a language, as a conversation, and distill it down maybe to conversation of two chords, basically two people talking. That's all you got to think about. Don't think about 50 people, and that's the danger. The danger in jazz is chord substitutions, and people complicate it by getting, instead of two people talking, they have all these inversions and 30 million chords that are in there, and really add a lot of complexity to it. The way I like to break it down is start off by thinking of two people talking, an E minor 7 and a D minor 7, and have a conversation, and think about it the way you would actually talk to somebody and translate that to some of the sounds that you hear. So, all right then. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you get something out of this. Practice, practice, practice.